close to acceptable beer consumer. I'm welcome by Antagonizer. And that's how you define a daylight savings time morning.
Your audio is really muddled for me after we came back from that
Oh
video.
no!
Oh, that one's better.
Sometimes my headset mic is real hit and miss. So how are you this fine daylight savings time morning?
A little groggy since it's daylight savings time. Otherwise, pretty good.
Yeah, daylight savings time. Not a fan. Not a fan at all. So, little background. Zach and I met through a friend, and then we began playing 4th edition together.
Yeah, way back in the days when 4th edition was a thing.
And then, man, we played 4th edition through the beginning of 5th, but in between there, you introduced Beyond the Wall.
And I think first I introduced Dread, and then
Dread, yes,
Apocalypse World,
yes,
and then Beyond the Wall.
So basically, if I'm running something different and unusual, it's probably because Zach has run it first, and I've been like, ooh. So you're kind of my RPG pusher.
You're hip. So a friend of mine and I have been talking about how we've got our fill of 5th edition now, and we want to go back to the hipster D&Ds of like basic rules or not D&D stuff. I mean, I'm still going to keep running several 5th edition games, but like I'm not looking to add more 5th edition to my life right now.
Fair. Beyond the Wall, for those who don't know, is a great combo of probably 2nd and 5th.
Yeah, so it's one of those OSR clones where they took the best of the old stuff and some of the concepts of newer games, story games, and put it into a package. And you can get it from Drive-Thru RPG in a nice printed hardcover. And they have, I don't know if you heard about this one, Ben, they have Through Sunken Lands, which is their like Conan-esque sword and sorcery offered in the Grey Mouser setting. But it's like the same style of stuff. But the best thing about, and what I will recommend Beyond the Wall, is they have playbooks for people to make characters where it's like a questionnaire where you fill out or randomly roll, like, what does your parents do in the village if you're going to be the self-taught mage? And it sort of builds the character for you, but it also builds a little story. Which means, like, if you're just playing a one-shot, you got a quick character, and you got some background about it. So, driving through
that game, though. Spells are, like...
that's the most old-school part of Beyond the Wall, is it's like first edition spells, where, like, yeah, you have cantrips as a nod to, like, normal, like, modern games, but the cantrips, none of them do damage. You get like a spell a day at first level, and your rituals take hours to cast. And Fireball is a ritual in the game, so if you want to cast a Fireball, you better have, I think it's like 3 hours or 4 hours to like
4 hours.
Some party members guard you while you hide up in the hills above the orcs.
I hope to at some point get back to our Beyond the Wall game that we were doing. I absolutely adored that game. First of all, I didn't have to run it. Second of all, I thought it was just brilliant and had so much fun playing it. But, you know, Zach pointed out, Zach is responsible for my love of Dread. I think the first Dread game, I played 2 Dread games with you relatively close together. One, we was like a carnival.
Yeah,
we fell in a Minotaur's mine.
Yeah, that was my bait and switch of like, we're gonna play a Dread game about a carnival, and everyone's like, oh, we're gonna have to fight evil carnies, and I'm like, no, you are the carnies.
Yeah. Which was really fun. But I think the one I enjoyed even more was the one where we were on the steamship, and I played like the little girl, which was very Lovecraftian.
it was a sort of a whaling ship running into a like some sort of, I don't remember if it was a dread leviathan or just a weird whale, or maybe it was a squid. I remember there was like evil ink that you fought. Um,
Yeah, it was like a mix between like Lovecraftian and Moby Dick.
yes,
It was great. So and then you've introduced me to Aliens. Since then, I played it at Extra Life,
yes,
which
that's
was a lot of fun.
that is maybe Alien is probably my one of my favorite RPGs. The Alien role playing game that came out a couple years ago from Free League. They do Tales from the Loop as well. It's the same basic system that they did, I think, originally with Mutant Year Zero. It is a perfect one-shot system. They had a Colonial Marines campaign. That's like a 4-part campaign that I've run. And that's probably the longest I can imagine stretching it out. But it's like a perfect match of rules to the kind of game that you want when you think of an Alien game. Like when you think of an Aliens movie where you're going to have like maybe one person alive at the end and everyone else is going to have like panicked and died horribly, that is what you get with the Alien RPG, just like you get with an Alien film.
Yeah, I can't imagine, just based on the playing we did, I can't imagine that game going longer than one shot. Maybe 2 if it bleeds over and you need more time. But that game is hyper focused. It's like, you go somewhere, you meet the problem, and you flee the problem.
So with the Marine little campaign, why am I forgetting the name of what it is? Was good. And the thing was, you had several characters who could reduce the stress of your companions, okay, which is what you need to be able to have a slightly longer. And I apparently don't have my copy of the physical one of that handy. Sorry, I'm leaving because I'm going over to I have my desk set up since I've been at home running games for the last 3 years. Well, I actually started running a lot more online games back in 2017. So I was all set before the pandemic. I started running.
You're ahead of the curve.
I decided I wanted to run a second edition Planescape game, and so I found a group online, and then I was like, well, I have alternate Saturdays when I'm not running this second edition game. So I found a group for a 5th edition game. So every Saturday I'm running a game. Well, my wife is at work. And now they're both playing 5th edition, but we've played some other things for the one game in between. They're both in multi-year. Well, one of them just finished a multi-year campaign. The other one's sort of 2/3 of the way through a multi-year campaign.
Someone pointed out the other day that D&O, if you count Domains of Dread as kind of the prequel, D&O has been running for 3 years, which is bonkers to me. It's a lot of episodes online if anyone gives a shit. So we're here to talk about prep. You and I have an interesting relationship when it comes to prep and approach. So my prep style, I would say, was very heavy for a long, long time.
I remember you bringing out, when we first started playing together, you would bring out this binder of prep, and I'd be like, what do you... I kind of understood it. I understood it more in 4th edition, when you had to make your customized monsters, and so you just end up with pages of monster stats anyway. Because you had to have a printout of that monster at the table. You couldn't just flip back and forth between pages of the monster manual. You had to have a whole page in front of you to run a monster. So if you had 4 monsters, you didn't want to have to be moving between the monster manual. You want to have 4 pages that you lay out in front of you like a madman, and try and look at all at once to remember all the triggers and nonsense of 4th edition. I still miss a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of do too. There's a part of me that wants to go run either some Gamma World. I still have I wanted to run that the murder hobo like contest game where it was like all play murder hobos and you're like basically like doing a Running Man-esque contest. Um, but you introduced me to Mike Shea work,
Yes.
and because you were running a game and I was like, well, where's your prep? And you pulled out a goddamn note card. And you're like, here it is. Yeah, it's an index card. This is all I'm doing.
Yeah,
So,
I have his Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. I backed his latest Kickstarter, the Lazy DM's Companion. I have the PDFs for that. Hopefully, I'll be getting the physical copies. And Kickstarter was weird before we had like supply chain shortages, and now I just sort of like, oh, something stirred up from a Kickstarter. What a pleasant surprise! And I don't back things unless I'm like, if this shows up in 3 years, it'll be a pleasant surprise. But he has. I do back him on Patreon, which is a great thing. He puts a ton of Patreon content, and every week I listen to his prep shows. If you run a published D&D campaign that he's run before, it is worth going back and listening to his like prep show episodes of it, because you just get like he works through like the problems that you'll find. And like I ran Ghost of Saltmarsh for one of my Saturday games, and being like, I think it was like usually 2 or 3 chapters behind him at least in Ghost of Saltmarsh, and it quickly got behind that because my Ghost of Saltmarsh game lasted almost 2 years, and he ran it in like 9 months at most. But having that to like go on, it meant that when I got to certain chapters, I knew what some like the pitfalls were, which was great. So
I've become a huge fan. I think again, it's based upon you gave me the Lazy Dungeon Master's Guide for Christmas one year.
yes,
And we're basically like, this will change your life. And it has. My prep really consists of, before like digging in deep and doing his worksheet for most sessions, I would just say, okay, this is kind of the beats I want to hit, and then everything else that happens is it's just there. It'll be awesome. And kind of having that confidence to do that has been phenomenal. So when you're prepping, I know you don't follow that like as gospel. How are you going about your prep?
Ooh, let me show you my prep. All of my prep I do in Google Documents and Google Spreadsheets. And it is super disorganized right now. Let me show you the terrible prep I am doing. I'll share my screen. It is sort of a it's a little bit of a mess, but I'm making it work. So I have a Google document. This is for my one D&D game. It's just like disorganized because I'm not like publishing. It's just like super disorganized notes because I'm always using the find function. So in this game, they played through the 5th edition. They played through Cult of the Reptile God, and I had a group of night hags behind the Reptile God cult. So they dealt with all of that, and now they're in the Barrier Peaks. I looked at running expeditions to Barrier Peaks and was like, that spaceship map would be a nightmare to put into a virtual tabletop and try and like make virtual lighting and stuff. So I'm like, let me just take the inspiration of Crazy Zoo with Mind Flayer, Crashes of the Barrier Peaks, and then one of my player characters, her undead warlock patron is Kaz, the betrayer of Vecna.
Really?
So then I'm like, let's have them also fight a Vecna cult. So that's what they're dealing with. So each session, I just sort of like will. I have sort of like my general stuff up here where I've got all of my ridiculous Dyson maps that I'm using and putting into Roll20 linked. They did a big they did the mega delve for a whole section of dwarven mines. But then each session I'll just like start a either I'll name it as the date and just put so this just has like the treasure that they were gonna find, like my weird like cryptic notes about the NPC that they were gonna find. Occasionally I'll do secrets and clues from Mike Shea's Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master of like things they might find out, so that I make sure like I have some things written out. Or the other prep sort of style I do is I'll just do a location. So like the last location, the next location they're going to is a weird puzzle dungeon I'm building. That is, the conceit is it was a temple where the Vecna cultists were like, let's test your devotion to Vecna. So if you're a Vecna cultist and you're willing to have your eye torn out and lose your hand, it's gonna be super easy to go through. But when you're a normal adventurer and you don't want to like stick your left hand into an orb of annihilation or have crawling claws tear out your left eye, less fun. So like I have a keys for my map and just like notes for myself to run. So it's much more than like the index card I used to do, but it's still, you can still see that it's like pretty sparse, and then they'll like add description as we're playing. So like I know that there's a pool of sorrows where there's unholy water dedicated to Vecna. They're gonna fight a banshee and 2 clay columns there. I know there's gonna be eerie singing. When they actually show up, I'll describe more details.
You're just using like crib notes.
Yeah, it's like just enough that I have a little bit prepped to like to add some flavor to later. And like treasure is important in the campaign, so I do my random treasure. The biggest tool I use, honestly,
Donjon,
is Donjon. Like the Donjon 5e, just to be able to reference the spell sheet, to do the random generator and generate treasures or weird magic items. I love giving out weird magic items, because then they like don't know what to do with them. It's like, what do you do when you have a potion of flies where it lets you breathe out a cloud of flies? It's like, when are you gonna figure out a way to use that? It's like it would obscure an area, so if you needed to hide, you could use it. But yeah, so that's sort of like
I need to get back to using Donjon a little bit more. I've been really good about like just using Shea's relic model.
Well, and that has Donjon has the cipher option too, where you can generate the cipher relics of Mike Shea's stuff. So you get the broken platinum ring. When thrown at a target, it does 3d6 acid damage, dex save for half. And the cipher or the relic idea, Mike Shea took it from Numenera.
Yep.
But it's a one-use magic item that is potentially slightly more powerful than a player should have at that level. But since it's one use, it's not a big deal. The one thing to know with them is like you have to remind your players, and in Numenera, the conceit is if you have too many of the ciphers, they start exploding or bad things happen. But for like 5th edition, you just have to remind your players that they should be using them. They shouldn't be hoarding them, because otherwise they're just going to have this whole list of stuff that they're never using.
You know, you could like use the wild magic table or another wild magic table to, like, if you start accumulating things, and carrying them together, you're going to basically called wild magic effects.
Right, and I should do that more, but it is one thing I use, is just like being able to generate a treasure, be like, okay, we've got a CR5, I want a treasure hoard, and I just click through until I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting, and then adjust as needed. Like, it means I can gesundheit. It means I can
button fast enough.
It means I can like just easily add in things. So yeah, that's like mostly my prep. So then like For their barrier peaks, I'm using a lot of stuff from the Numenera 5th edition. Why am I blanking on the name of it?
Yeah, that's a book that I was extremely interested in, but it's like $70.
Yeah.
Monty
I
Cook
backed it as a
stuff is-
Kickstarter.
Yeah, Monty Cook stuff is not cheap.
It's not cheap, but it's good enough quality that like when I splurge on it.
Did you?
And the thing to watch is, I don't know if you ever watch like the bundle of holdings or other like group sales of it.
I don't know if I've ever seen that.
But occasionally they'll come up on that, and you can get like Monty Cook stuff for like 50% off, stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's sort of like, you can see, because I'm using the stuff, the Numenera converted to 5th edition, that I'm copying and pasting from the PDF, the weird magic items they're finding, like a sunfire crown where they could implant it to their head and have sunlight shine from them.
I love that. That's a really, really interesting. Yeah, so how long do you find your prep takes you?
So for Roll20, it's kind of a kind of like, I'll usually spend an hour or two just like thinking and working on like the Google Doc, or just toss stuff in the Google Doc when I think about it. And I'll sit down and like spend half an hour to an hour doing like a prep session, as it were.
So like probably 2 hours of just idea mining, and then like an hour of actual prep.
Yeah, but then with Roll20, I do extra stuff where I have to make sometimes NPC tokens, or make maps or things, or I will do, so like I'll show. I'm starting a new campaign for my other Saturday 5th edition group. So I've spent a lot of time prepping the Roll20 thing with all sorts of fancy nonsense, like the date, month, and day of the week. I can rotate to reflect, like, oh, it's Onsdag, not Mondag, for the day of the week. To have it reflect the correct day of the week. Or they have a map down here, so like I put some push pins in, and like I can do a tooltip to be like, this is one of the PC's, her hometown. We haven't come up with a name yet, but that's where it is. And this is where the party is, where we have this ridiculous animated icon. Or here is this page I've created for their travel. So that once we have character tokens, they can be like, okay, here's where we're going to have when they're in a single file marching order. Here's where we're going to have when they're in overland marching order. If they need to remember what a long rest and a short rest do, I have it to with a little thing. When we need to keep track of who's on what watch, we've got a section for their watches. We got a time of day. We have another weather where I can change it to be like, oh, you're traveling, but now the weather is snow.
Do you randomize that, or is it simply just...
I could randomize it. I'm just right now, like, I could change it to be a random table with like, and weight it. I'm not worrying about that. I've got a section for travel roles where they'll be able to drag their icon, their character token, to be like, my character is going to be watching for danger, or my character is going to be navigating. And the little like pop up of what they have. One of the things I created for a couple sessions in their last Ghost of Saltmarsh campaign is there was a big meeting of a bunch of NPCs that they were attending, and they wanted to be like keep track of it. So we created a ridiculous NPC tracker where we like moved the tokens of like who's associated with what group, and what things they're involved with. And so they said that they wanted that for the new campaign, so I set that up in the new campaign. So they'll have an NPC tracker where they'll be able to like, okay, this NPC is associated with this noble clan, or they think this NPC might be the trickster god, Lopt, or they think this NPC is associated with the cult of the Devourer that they're fighting. So they can sort of move the NPC. I'll just set the tokens so that any character can move them, so they'll be able to move the tokens to wherever they want, to remember what's what. But it means that like I have put together like these are all custom tokens that I've sort of created. Why is it? Is it Alt-C? No, it's Control. That I've created with like art, and then like use Token Maker to put a token ring around. So there's like that takes a little time. Putting in maps, finding maps. So like I know that their first session 0, they're gonna visit a cabin near the location they're at. So I had to make it. This map that I found doesn't have a second level. Like you can see there are stairs up here, but it doesn't have a second level. So then I have like my crappy like MS Paint level of like this is what the attic they're going to go up to will be. You have to make either create or make some, or just drag in some additional characters. So like this custom NPC, the characters know that she looks like this friendly mead seller. They don't know that she's really a cultist. So I had to like update the character sheet so that when she does things, and I don't know why it doesn't do this. Whisper toggle so that when I have her do things, so that when they see that Emily does a dagger melee attack when it comes out in Roll20, it doesn't say cultist makes a dagger melee attack. It gives the game away.
So you're and one I blah 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 blah. One thing I know you thoroughly enjoy using, and we both do it, although I do it less frequently as you, but you love Cult of the Reptile God. What makes that old school adventure such a strong linchpin that you can fit it into so many different games and make it kind of the opening salvo?
So what Cult of the Reptile God has is, let me stop sharing my screen and find my Cult of the Reptile God. What it has is it has a great isolated location, right? You have a small isolated village. They're not going to go anywhere else.
Is it the fact that there's nothing in the area of interest beyond Orlean that makes it such a interesting setting? Everything's so self-contained.
Yeah. I mean that's part of it. So like you're at. I don't know why it's not sharing. There it goes. So you've got. Where's the overland map? You've got. It's hard to see on this overland map. But you've got like. Orlean is sort of isolated at the edge of this uh, marshy area. There's like not anything within a day's travel of it. You've got this great
Aw, Poofs.
village map. Yes, we have Poof. She's upset.
Oh.
Oh.
She is.
She's very vocal. Put her on her chair and see if she is quiet.
You don't have your sock drawer open so she can pillage it?
No. So you have this great map of the village map has about 24 keyed locations, which is enough to be like plenty to explore, but not overwhelming. There's little secrets in a lot of the locations. It has a little bit of everything. You're gonna travel overland a little bit to go in the marsh. You have a couple of dungeons in the village itself, plus then a bigger dungeon in the marsh. You get like the fun NPC interaction of like going to whichever inn you're gonna stay at and figuring out the secrets there. There's like a crazy old wizard who may or may not be helpful, and then like it's got a cult, and it's fun to have a cult to run. It is perfect for like just running from like first level up to like third or fourth level.
Is it the perfect module for that?
I think it's like a perfect like introduction to the D&D type module. Like this is all the stuff you can do for D&D. So I've run it for both of my Saturday 5th edition groups. The group that played through Ghost of Saltmarsh, the first thing they did that I did as a group with them is I ran Reptile Cult, and then after that they did Curse of Strahd, and then we started a new campaign with Ghost of Saltmarsh. And then my other Saturday group, we did 2nd edition Planescape Modern March, and then some other things. And then when they're like, we want to do a 5th edition, I did Dragon Heist for them. And then they're like, we want to do more 5th edition. And I'm like, well, I'm going to take and just expand Cult of the Reptile God as like a starting point. So, and I've played through it once in a first edition when we used 1st edition rules when I played through it, and then I've run it in 5th edition once in person plus the 2 times online, and then I obviously pillaged it and like used it as the basis of the Beyond the Wall adventure that I ran for you. So yeah, I've run it 5 or 6 times now.
And really well. I've played it a couple different times, being run by different people, and I can thoroughly say that your version of it in Beyond the Wall was my favorite, just because of the way that you did tailor it to what was going on, and also you adjusted it on the fly, knowing that I played it before multiple times. You're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to make some changes.
And Christy had played it before too, so
yeah,
like
I forgot about it. Yeah, she had.
It was multiple players had played it before, but there's still enough to like grab off out of it. Honestly, my favorite thing is like it's this tiny village, and there's actually 3 inns. Yeah. One of them got burned down, but it has like troglodytes in it. But then you have these 2 other inns, and like all of the cultists are going to try and get you to go to the one inn, but the other inn just sounds much sketchier. Of like, oh, it's the Inn of the Slumbering Serpent. It's like a dragon, it's like a sneaky thing, maybe. So you're like, do I want to go to the Slumbering Serpent Inn? And it's like, you can really, like, my favorite thing about running is like the players getting to the village and like having them like have to figure out some of like how tricky the situation is. I
think you do a wonderful job, and this is across the board on any game, is subverting player expectation. You do this thing, and I think it's just because I mean, this is a great compliment. You're very deadpan. So, like, you don't give anything away. Like, I always feel like I give way too much away with like my facial expression and my voice and excitement. You're very controlled, so I can never get a good read on when you're like twisting the knife, and it makes it really fun.
Yeah, I mean it's like I want I try to do that. Like so in the Ghost of Saltmarsh game, as I was running out of the stuff in the book, and they were just finishing out the campaign by bringing in some additional material. I introduced an NPC to them, Elric Malamni, based off of the Elric story of like, there's this weird elf. He is exiled from wherever he was from. He has a weird sword, and he's cursed to never step foot on land, and he has this magic ship. And so the party was just like, they took that all at face value. So then when they were fighting some demons near his ship, and they realized they like actually got in his ship, and they started looking around and realized that no, he has a bunch of spells on his ship to make it look like it's got a bunch of magical spells on it, but it's just like Nistel's magical aura or whatever, and that he wasn't actually some sort of cursed immortal. He's just an elf who lives a long time and is like, I want to have a fancy reputation, so I'm going to have people start a rumor that I'm cursed to never set foot on land, and then just not set foot on land, so that people treat me as like a big fancy magical threat when I'm just like an elven pirate. So like, when they realized that that was what was going on with him, they were delighted.
You should send that to me. I might put that in my D&O game. That's pretty great. Since they're jumping all over the place. I did use the D&D cartoon characters. In fact, two of them are still with the characters. As well as Kellic before Wild Beyond the Witchlight even came out. I was using Kellic, and I was like, damn it. Because I love that character. I just think visually, Warduke and Kellic are actually all those LJN characters. Was it LJN? All those action figure characters, I think, have a really cool aesthetic. I don't know if they have any cool backstory to them, but they visually are really interesting. So I was very excited when they came back. So you've got a lot of games going on simultaneously. Is there cross-pollination, or is it simply just I have to compartmentalize in order to be able to get these done functionally?
There's not a lot of cross-pollination. So currently I'm running 2 Saturday 5th edition games. I have my new Saga of the Icy North game that I'm pillaging Eyes of the 13th Age, Eyes of the Stone Thief campaign for. So they're going to eventually have to fight a living dungeon that has a bunch of levels and keep it from devouring more locations and NPCs that they love. I'm running then the Barrier Peaks game that was Cult of the Reptile God and now is Barrier Peaks. Eventually, they're going to go into a astral plane endgame where they have to find some Vecna relics and then kill Vecna again, or make sure Vecna stays dead. I haven't quite figured that out. So those are the 2 Saturday games that I run on alternate Saturday afternoons. And then I have a Wednesday in-person game that I'm running, an Al-Qadim Ruined Kingdoms campaign in 5th edition, where they're all playing necromancy adjacent characters, and then we're going to be evil. They are evil-ish. Like, they're not doing, like, I played through this campaign as an evil character, and we were just, like, ruthless. No one escapes the tell of our villainy. They have let 4 or 5 NPCs escape their slaughters and betrayals.
So like some people get to tell the tales of our villainy.
Yeah, and they're gonna get back to town and figure out like, oh, yeah, our villainy is known. We're gonna start being known as those evil necromancers wandering around, and it might have consequences.
So this also brings me to the fact that you and Kevin do things on DM's Guild with El Kadim.
Kevin mostly. I mostly just like I will get do a editing and like he'll bounce options off of me.
But you've also worked on Rob Schwab, not Schwab.
I haven't published anything. I haven't published anything for Shadow of the Demon Lord, or Godless. It just, yeah.
Because we played an incredible, was like playing a mini series of an adventure you had written inside a shopping mall, which was phenomenal.
It was inside of a grocery store, and I never quite got that. So the if you want to get, it was just hit platinum bestseller. I'll put it in the StreamYard. If you want to grab Kevin's big necromancy spells packet, it has links. You can find all of his other necromancy packets, and it usually shows that because I listed as a contributor on the 2 Icy North supplements I did. You'll see those. But there is just a ton of necromancy stuff. He's done some Zakara Al Qadim stuff. Some other things. Just he does a lot more with the DM's Guild and stuff. I just sort of help out occasionally and like take a pass through to help find typos and stuff or bounce ideas off. Honestly, what I find is I'm too busy making content or running my games to really focus on writing more stuff for like the DM's Guild or writing stuff to publish for Shadow of the Demon Lord. Because we talked about 3 of the games I'm running. I still have a 4th game that I'm running and a 5th game that's sort of on hiatus and might start up again. Plus 1 game that I'm playing in and another game that I'll be rejoining to play in. So like 7, once you hit like 7 RPGs, like I don't have time. Like I'm prepping and playing and like doing other things. I don't have time to be doing a lot of like writing and editing for the DM's Guild.
What do you think is the most difficult challenge you face in playing and running that many games?
The thing that is the toughest in games is scheduling and keeping that. Like I've got a pretty good of like I've been trying to keep all of my games on a like fixed schedule of like we play every other week on Wednesday, or we play every other week on Saturday, or we play every other week on Thursday, so that like if whenever something comes up and we can't play, we don't reschedule. It's the next time. Mm-hmm. That's when we play, because I would love to be able to be like, 15 years ago, back when I was playing 3rd edition 3.5, we'd occasionally be like, oh, let's just call up a bunch of people and find 4 people to play 5th edition or 3.5 D&D for a one-shot on a Saturday night. I can't do that anymore. Like people are too busy. People have other things to do. Like the key to the reason why my 2 online Saturday games have lasted as long as they do is it's just every other Saturday. It's every other Saturday, and people can make it or they can't, and we just work around it. If too many people can't make it, maybe I run a one-shot, or we skip. But it's the consistent of I don't have to think about the scheduling. I don't have to delegate scheduling to someone else and worry about following up if they've done scheduling. Like, Kevin and I have been talking about trying to do something less marches, but it's like
that's my concern. That's what I want to do with Chaos Scar, and I'm concerned. Like, but I'd only want to do it once a month. So I think once a month as a stream would be a little bit easier, because I would. The nice thing is I wouldn't have to design a bunch of the work's already done. It's just doing some adaptation and then putting like out the job board so things can be picked ahead of time. But man, that is daunting when you think about like trying to schedule based on that.
Right. Well, and the thing of like, if it's a true, like whatever the true West Marches idea is, like a bunch of players get together and they go to the DM and they say, we can play at this time. Can you make that work? And the DM says, yeah, I can make that work. And it's like, if we were going to do that, I'd have to be like, okay, here are the slots I have as a DM. These are the 4 times I could play. And then it's just like waiting. Will you get enough players to come together to be like, there are 4 of us, we want to do that. Yeah. And I just wonder if if you'll have enough players to be motivated to do that. And I haven't. So scheduling. Scheduling is the biggest challenge I face. The second biggest is running games in Roll20. And this is why I'm sort of dropping. I dropped a couple of my games that I could move in person back to in person and out of Roll20. I was like, I don't love gridded combat. Like, I'm fine with it, but like there are times you'll have groups or players or characters and you're doing gridded combat and it just grinds to a halt as everyone feels like, okay, I have an action and a bonus action and move, and they agonize over, did they use their bonus action? Do they have anything to do with bonus action? They have all the spells. What are they going to do with their spells? They did it for a few minutes and they're like, well, I guess I'm just going to do Vicious Mockery. And it's like, yes, you should have just been like, default to I'm going to use Vicious Mockery unless I see there's a better thing. And it just like it kind of grinds to a halt. Like when you play with optional flanking rules and people are trying to figure out like count the squares and figure out like I have stopped using the virtual lighting option in Roll20 because it's gotten kind of buggy for me. But when I was using virtual lighting, it like especially with like pre-made modules where they've done that for me, which should be great. Like I don't want to have to put in virtual lighting and like carefully trace along the edge of the wall. But then they like trace so tight against the walls that when a character ducks around a corner, they actually cannot see what was going on when it wasn't their turn because they are hiding from the giants. And then they like pop out and they have to be like, oh, things are not where I expected. And then they have to figure out what they're doing. And like, yeah, I don't use miniatures or grids at my home table anymore. It's not for me. And it feels, for me as a DM, it always felt like I spent just a ton of time of being like sorting through miniatures again, sorting through my like monster tokens and be like, will these work? These look close enough. But like feeling like I just spent a lot of time like pulling them out, setting them aside, using them, and then having to put it all away, and then like repeating the whole process. It just got messy and cumbersome. It wasn't adding joy to my games. And so I'm trying to, one of the things I'm sort of trying to embrace again as a game master is like, I'm going to run the things that I really enjoy. And if I'm running a campaign and it's not enjoyable, I need to like figure out either how to make it enjoyable, or I need to just like go to the players and be like, I don't think this is working. Let's try something else.
Yeah. I think that's extremely fair, and it's a smart thing to do. So Zach, kind of thinking about it, I want to ask you a real weird question. What is your favorite character that you've either run or I've ran in a game that we've both been involved in?
A game that we've both been involved. I mean, I'm probably going to have to go back to Wayne. uh, of it didn't last long, but getting to give that one speech, and dropping into that group and being like, no, I am a paladin, and this is what I'm here to do, and this is what we're gonna do, was great. Man, it's been too long since we've played a lot of stuff. I think all of the Beyond the Wall characters were great.
That was a great game. I loved playing in that game.
The godless characters were great. I remember the first time we like decided that your goblin priest in Godless was going to start reciting song lyrics
that I worship from the book of That's What I Call Music, volume 83 through volume 575. That's the true gospel.
Yeah.
I mean, one reason I brought it up is because I wanted to talk about you playing Sid in 4th edition, because I thought that was an extremely interesting collaboration, because as the person running the game, you allowed me to do some interesting things there. How does that, because I find myself doing that more often than not, is working with players. If someone comes to me and says, I have this idea, but it might circumvent some things you want to do, but this is kind of where I see, my character going. What do you think about that? Like, kind of not working at odds with the party, but working with the DM to have a direction for your particular character.
So maybe it's a little tricky because I don't have a lot of players who are like really coming to me with a lot of like sort of like I want to take things in a different direction type pitches. Mostly I'm just like spend a lot of time sort of like once they sort of build the character, asking questions and making sure that they're thinking about their character and like delving deeper, offering up like options of ways they can go. Sorry, the cat was making a like. I can see in the monitor as I'm watching the stream. The cat was making like I'm gonna poop now pose, and I'm like, no, we're not gonna. We're pooping enough other places that aren't the litter box. We're not gonna poop on the chair. But she was just rearranging, so we're all good. So back to that. So yeah, like of like working with players to like build out gradually more of their backstory, or like so with my Barrier Peaks game, one of the players is playing a warlock of the Undying or Undead. There's the two like undead patron options, and I forget which is which. Because one is Undying and one is Undead, and they're basically a lot of the same powers. But whichever one she's playing, she was like, "Well, I want to like." She wanted to have the familiar option, and like, there isn't any good undead familiar, so I'm like, well, looking at but they're like because the other warlock familiar options are like imp and quasit. They're like or pseudo dragon. They're like CR2 maybe, and Claw and Claw wasn't. And I was like, well, Wisp is the same CR as that. So I'm like, well, what about a Wisp? And she's like, yeah, that sounds great. And then she's like, what if the Wisp is because like the thing with whatever patron she chose is like you're kind of dead. You're gonna become dead. She's like, what if my character is the body of my my original character, and the Will of the Wisp is her original soul.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a really
so her soul ended up like being out of the body. She gave it the name Marjorie. So then like once she learned that the name was Marjorie, she's like they started like encountering NPCs who knew Marjorie, so they knew the character Harrow as Marjorie, and then she's like, the players were like, "Oh, you're dead. You died at some point, and your soul is the familiar you're sending out to do the scouting." So like building things like that, of like collaborating with the players to like deepen the characters and suggest options, but not like tell them, right? To be like, here's an option, tell me what you want, and we can like collaborate on it instead of just being like, this is what I've decided for your character. That's what I've been trying to do.
I try to do that all the time as well. I think that you get better results and better play satisfaction from folks when they feel like they have a vested interest in where things are going, because they're telling the story. I kind of try to look at it as like, I'm a facilitator. That's it. I do the in-between stuff. I don't really dictate the story. You dictate the story. That's why my prep has become so much looser, is because like I can't plan for the weirdness they're going to do, and that's beautiful. I'm just going to ride that wave.
Right, you're not really like figuring out what's going to happen during the session. Like my prep, I'm like, okay, what are some locations they could be at? What are some NPCs they could encounter? What are some challenges they could face? Whether it's monsters or traps or other things, weird environmental effects. I don't plan for like, I know that they're going to start at point A and then at point Z. It's like, just like, what are some points I can sprinkle in there?
I have beats that I'm always looking for. Like, my hope is we hit one of these 3 beats throughout, and then I kind of look at it as like doing a Buffy the Vampire Slayer-esque like show scripting. Like, there's a big bad in the background. That's the front, or one of the 3 fronts. Everything in between is just them doing what it is they decide they want to do, whether it's small side quests, I guess, whether it's meeting NPCs, whether it's just them having a very personalized story about themselves. I try to like leave that a little bit, not even a little bit, I try to leave that wide open. So, which is interesting because sometimes things just get wildly out of hand, which is beautiful. And then it makes me change like that background front. It makes me go, okay, well, that front really doesn't matter anymore. So now I have to figure out a new front based upon what they did. So yeah, it's the only thing for me that I'm trying to work on is speed. We've been playing Down Outlands for a while now, and if the players have pointed this out, it's only been like 3 or 4 months of their time, and they've done all this crazy stuff, and I'm like, shit, that is not working. So trying to figure that out is kind of my next big step of learning to be better at running games. So yeah, I don't know, Zach, where can folks find you on the interwebs?
So antagonizerelations.blogspot.com. I haven't updated it in so long because I've been busy running games. Like, I keep thinking I need to go and put a post of like, I've just been busy running games and doing other things. But it has the links to things. Yeah.
Isn't that the point?
Yeah. And then my more personal blog where I mostly put up mixes music is thatwordyguy.blogspot.com. And I should do more stuff, but I'm just busy running games or thinking about games or playing too much Zelda Breath of the Wild again.
Oh, we can talk about that business.
Yeah. So I mean, we didn't even get a chance in this hour to talk about the Blades in the Dark game I'm running online.
No, we didn't. Which is another game I'm intrigued by.
Like I think a game that I want to subject you to at some point that I tried running it online several times and it just didn't work because it's not. I don't think it's an online game. is Ultraviolet Grasslands.
Yeah, you
Um,
talked about that before. I'm very intrigued by that.
I want to get to a chance to run. I have a physical copy of Morkburg now. I got the Root tabletop RPG Kickstarter physical stuff arrived. I got a lot of stuff like to run and just not enough time. And I already run uh, 4 games. I'm going to be running potentially a 5th here again and playing in 2 games. Like it's like I'm not doing a lot of stuff publicly online because I'm doing so much other stuff, and then I'm already like thinking I need to start figuring out what I'm going to do for Extra Life so I can figure out how to plan to run, because I usually end up running 5-6 games for Extra Life.
Yeah, usually I think 6 is about where you land. Well,
so
the invitation's open whenever you want to come back on, and we'll do actual prep together. Since I didn't have to prep anything this week because last game was such a one of the characters literally rode a ballista bolt down towards a dragon off a flying ship like Slim Pickens in Doctor Strangelove. So that probably tells you where things went last game, which is great. I love when things go off the rails in a great way. Thank you as always.
Thanks for having me.
For just everything. For not just running great games, but also being willing to help other people run great games. So this has been Prep School. Hey, DNO tomorrow night on this channel? Who knows? And then Bata Games on Thursday. And then we'll be back here on Sunday. So otherwise, I hope everyone has a wonderful first day of daylight savings time. Remember
Go take a nap.
Yeah, remember to spring ahead. I don't know, it's dumb. I hate it. It's the worst. All right. Until next time, happy rolling.